Seeing none, thank you for your participation. At this time, we'll move to the public comment period. So I believe we have with us some tribal chairs who at this time might like to make some comment. So we'll start there. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Sherry Trepp. I'm the chairperson of Hebematol Pomo of Upper Lake, a small tribe in Northern California, a small gaming tribe, having gone through the very arduous task of having to restore our land base, having been terminated in the 50s for the purposes of gaming. It was a very long, arduous, expensive process, and we were looking forward to having the opportunity to provide for our membership and provide jobs to our community and the community at large as established for us in IGRA. We oppose any potential legislation in internet gaming at this time. Legalization of iPoker is a significant public policy consideration with long-term implications for the state of California, its citizens, and our tribal governments, particularly because there are 110 tribes here in the state of California with 60 casinos currently. Although stakeholders have made some progress in building consensus in some issues during this legislative session, important disagreements remain, including eligibility for licensure and suitability standards that instill public trust and confidence in the integrity of the potentially eligible online gaming licensees. Moreover, the state of California, notwithstanding the considerable research that we heard about today and the database building, technical standards, et cetera, that are being done, the state is simply not prepared to effectively regulate statewide sanctioned interactive gaming activities. And we did hear that it would take the minimum of 18 to 24 months to get there. There are no state technical standards for interactive gaming in place. There are no state minimum standards for interactive gaming in place. There isn't even a basic regulatory framework in place or a draft on the table for public comment and stakeholder input that would otherwise provide for an outline of how states' gaming regulatory agency plan to address the fundamental issues related to proper interactive online gaming regulation. We generally agree with Chairman Maccaro's statements earlier, and unless until there has been sufficient meaningful stakeholder discussion on proposed gaming bill, and unless and until we know what the complex nuances of any gaming bill actually are, we simply cannot support any effort to legalize online interactive gaming, particularly through urgency measures and without substantial facts, known impacts, and likely outcomes for everyone involved. Thanks.
Thank you. Chairman? Sir?
My name is Steve Stallings. I'm a council member for the Rincon Band of Liseño. On behalf of our chairman, Bo Mazzetti, and the other members of our tribal council, I want to thank you, Chairman Gray, and members of the committee for taking the time for this important hearing. We've actually been working on this issue a very long time, so it's somewhat disingenuous to say that there's any rush to judgment here. And we're pleased to see the dialogue and momentum that's taken place today throughout the various panels. I just want to make a few quick points. We believe strongly that Californians need and deserve a regulated market for intrastate poker. As you've heard, many Californians are currently playing online poker in a market that goes unchecked and unregulated. The very fact that the brick and mortar industry is regulated was the fact that it was unregulated before. That's the history of the gaming industry. It was unregulated, and what made it the industry it is today is the fact that it is regulated, and that's going to be true of internet poker too. Strong consumer protections are needed to ensure a quality experience and to keep out operators that currently are taking legal bets from Californians. What is important when we look at bad act provisions is, quote, bad actors are people. We have a current regulatory structure that looks at and does background checks and has adequate checks to make sure that bad actors, individuals, are not a part of our industry in California. The proposed legislation that we've seen thus far in the history of this industry, this issue over the last 7 years, is going to provide for adequate resources to support our regulatory bodies in California. And also, you've heard from the panels that the technology is there for us to readily to be able to regulate this industry. And that industry today, while it's small in 3 jurisdictions, has a proven track record of regulatory success. There have been no major hiccups. Online poker is a new horizon. This is not tribal government gaming, but at the same time, it's a great opportunity for California. You've heard that Californians voted to stop the expansion of gaming. That is true. But they voted specifically to not permit slot machines in any other venue outside of a tribal gaming facility on reservation lands. Internet poker is not a casino-style gaming. It's the evolution of a homegrown California pastime and an industry. You know, I've heard it said that, you know, Texas Hold'em, it didn't start in Texas. It started right here. It should actually be California Hold'em. That should be the real name of the game. Thank you for working on this issue, and we look forward to passage of the legislation this year.
Thank you for your testimony. Any additional public comment at this time? Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Chairman Gray, members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to address some of the issues related to Internet poker and the regulation thereof. I am Reverend James Butler from the California Coalition Against Gambling Expansion. First, without great surprise, we oppose Internet poker. Regardless of how it's regulated, regardless of how many hubs, regardless of the revenues that are promised, just to be clear, we oppose it. Second, we think that this discussion of regulation may almost be premature because I'm not convinced that there's ever been a declaratory statement that Internet poker is good for California. Now, without a doubt, we have heard from various gambling interests who I think hope to profit by millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, that it is good for them. But according to the studies, even those done by the state of California, an increase in gambling results in an increase in a number of negative social impacts: crime, welfare, unemployment, bankruptcies, suicide. So I am here to simply say that we will oppose it, but this is to look at regulatory elements. And so I am thinking this, that if you do choose to legalize Internet poker for the some 90,000 poker players represented by the previous speaker's organization, I hope that you will do something to protect the other 38 million Californians. I don't want to pay for their gambling. And so as you do this, I hope that along with the various elements that you have, you're going to have their names, their addresses for the geolocation, Social Security for tax purposes and verifications, date of birth to show that they're of legal age. I hope that you might also include some of these elements as well. An affirmative declaration that they are current with child care payments or alimony, if either of those are applicable. Because sometimes people aren't, and when they are not, that falls upon the rest of us here in California. I think there should be an affirmative declaration that the player and or their family do not receive any of the California social assistance programs, including but not limited to Medi-Cal, unemployment, AFEC CalWorks, supplemental nutritional programs, women and infant care, SSI supplementary, CalFresh, in-home services, or general relief. Again, if they are receiving these and gambling money, then people like myself who don't gamble are supporting their gambling practice. And I think that's unfair to the rest of California. I have others, but I'm lateness of hour, we're going to hurry through. I also think there should be some requirements of the operators. I don't know how feasible some of these are, but I think there's an advantage to register in person, requiring a state ID so we know not just the name, but this is the person and this is their ID, that we might even also ask if they could require a biometric password instead of just a normal password as part of playing the game. That would assure that you don't have what was mentioned earlier, bad parents who simply neglect the system. Instead, this would be something that would guarantee that the person who is signed up is the person who's playing. And they have mentioned establishing stop-loss levels. I think there also should be an accounting available to the player that shows the deposits, the dates and duration of play, the winnings, the losses, the net winnings, and ultimately the balance. Some of you, I'm sure, at one time or other have been engaged in an activity, whether it be gambling or something else, where you begin to lose track of time and lose track of other resources that might be engaged. The players need to know this. And also, they did mention self-exclusion.
Reverend, I'm going to ask you to wrap up your comments. In respect to what a bill would look like, I would encourage you, there's 4 pieces of legislation currently introduced in the legislature. I'm certainly happy to meet with you about the specifics of what should be in legislation, but for today's discussion, I think the recognition that you're opposed to the adoption of a framework is probably the more important point.
Well, but I was trying to say that if it does go forward, I hope that at least you'll consider some very strict regulations on the players and the operators. But thank you for your time, Chairman Gray. And I, too, can make available some of these letters from the FBI and some other studies. Thank you very much.
Please make those available to my office. Thank you. Any other public testimony at this time? Seeing none, I want to once again thank all the folks who made themselves available for testimony and to be here to hear this important discussion. Certainly, I think we here at the California Legislature have been talking about Internet poker longer than it took to win World War II. But we're going to continue those discussions, and we don't want to move forward with something that's not well thought out, that doesn't advance the California's interest, consumer protection, that has strong provisions to protect our constituents, and that was the interest of today's discussion. And although it was a lengthy discussion, I think it was an important and good discussion. So, members, thank you for your time. And again, thank you to all those people who made themselves available for important testimony today. And with that, we're adjourned.